All right, shalom. First, I'd like to start by saying all praise to Yahweh Shema Shai, double honors to the elders and apostles that rule well, and salutations to the brothers that's doing the truth with sincerity. This is Revelation chapter 18, and I'm going to start at verse 2. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils. That's talking about America after America gets destroyed. And the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of fornication. Right, and as you can see, what Venezuela is going through is because of them drinking the wine of the wrath, the wine of America, man, the philosophies of America, man. They took on the monetary system, not monetary policy of America, man, which in turn inflated their currency. Also, you know, they used to have a lot of businesses and corporations and a lot of work in their society that they stopped doing, man, just like America. It says, for all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath for fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. Right, man. So America actually started the philosophies of, the central bank and all these other nations, man, which is bringing other nations down, and these other nations getting mad at it. That's why they separating themselves from America and changing their currency. But as you can see, Venezuela didn't have a chance to do it. Why? Because they are the 12 tribes of Israel, one. Two, that's biblical prophecy. And what they're going through is what they get, man, because they want to return back to Yahweh Shema Shai, man. But let's go into it. Shalom.
So, where is Venezuela headed? Let's bring in our guest for today's discussion. In Washington, D.C., Sonia Schott, an independent journalist and political analyst. In Caracas, Daniel Fermin, researcher for the Center of Political Studies at the Andres Bello Catholic University. And in New York, we have Vanessa Neumann, founder and CEO of trade integrity consultancy firm Asymmetrica. Thank you all. Welcome to Inside Story. Daniel, in Caracas, if I can start with you. There are those who say that Venezuela is on the brink of total collapse, economic collapse, political collapse, and social collapse. Would you agree with that assessment? Just how dire is the situation in the country today?
Well, I would agree with that. Venezuela is facing the worst economic crisis in contemporary history. You have profiled the situation very accurately. The long queues to get food and medicine, there's shortages, long lines. It's a very dire situation in Venezuela. We are on the verge of collapse if we can't already say that we are in collapse. Venezuelan economy is going through a very, very rough crisis, and the people have had enough. Our recent studies show that 86% of the population say the situation is either bad or very bad. And when we ask the people, yes, the situation is bad now, but how do you see the situation in the next 12 months? The Venezuelans answer, over 62% of Venezuelans answer that it will get worse. And over 60% of Venezuelans blame the government directly for the crisis.
Right.
So it is a very accurate assessment.
Just how has the crisis affected the day-to-day life of Venezuelans? You mentioned the long queues. Is this just in certain parts of the country, or is it throughout the entire country where we see these long queues of people lining up for basic necessities like toilet paper?
It is throughout the entire country. The entire country is going through this very complicated situation. Venezuelans in Caracas, the capital city, we have a very tough time accessing basic necessities, but the people in the interior of the country, in the states, in the province, have it even worse. And we're not just talking about medicine, we're not just talking about basic things such as toilet paper, we're talking about food, and that's where the situation escalates. Because when people feel they can't buy bread, when people feel they can't buy cooking oil, when people feel they can't buy the most basic things to cook with, then the conflict starts to get another tone. And Venezuelans, we have to place our fingers on fingerprint scanners in order to buy medicine and food. They tell us that there's controls over your ID number. You can only buy on certain days. You can only buy certain quantities of food. So this all boils down to a model, a political and economic control model that has decimated the economic apparatus, that has decimated national production, expropriating businesses, expropriating the producers of food and basic means. And now that oil prices are down and the government did not have the provision to save for rainy days, now Venezuelans are left with nothing in a country that only produces oil, that imports everything. Our creditors, we have no money to pay them. The country is severely in debt.
Sure.
And the government just lost control of the situation.
So a very dire situation.
Crises,
a very dire situation. Let's hear from our other guests now. Let's hear from Vanessa.